It's really awesome because they can be fed completely off weeds in our fields. So we can harvest, we can hoe out weeds in our garden beds and bring the weeds to the rabbits. They eat the green matter, and then they produce a really nutrient-rich manure. That manure falls down below the cage, and it then gets consumed by, broken down even further. We could use the manure directly in the gardens, but we even make it, take it a further step, and it gets broken down by these red worms, and they take that manure and break it down and make it even more plant-available form. It's a really great system. We bring this back into the gardens, and we use this to provide fertility for the plants. It also helps in holding moisture. This organic matter, this manure, acts like a sponge and holds moisture. And of course, it's really rich for the plants, and so we were able to grow some really nice crops using this worm composting material here. What we at ECHO want people to see and understand, especially with the farmers that we ultimately are trying to reach, is that land is a precious inheritance. It's something that's to be cherished and valued, and it's something to be cared for. That if you care for it, you can leave it as a precious inheritance to your next generation.
One of the first commandments of God was for Adam to till and care for the soil. Maybe this was God telling us to pay attention to what's under our feet.
If you look at the biblical view of human being stewardship over the environment, it provides a balanced view of our relationship to our natural world. Some think that the natural world is simply there for our use with impunity, that the only thing that matters is whatever human beings want to do. And the earth is sort of a sterile template that doesn't have any intrinsic value or dignity. That's not the biblical view, but the other extreme view would be that human beings are a parasite, that we're somehow an alien imposition and we're not really a part of the natural world itself. The biblical view is the perfect balance between these two things. God creates us along with the other creatures on the sixth day and draws us out of the ground from the dust of the earth. So from the very beginning, human beings are related to the physical universe and to the ground itself. God then gives us stewardly dominion over it, both to use and to till and to keep the earth, but also to preserve it and to exercise our wise stewardship over it. The biblical view of human beings' relationship to the soil, I think, balances these two unfortunate extremes.
So what responsibility do we have to care for and to sustain what God has created?
God creates us as stewards of our natural environment. He gives us responsibility both to use, but also to preserve the inherent dignity of the soil, of the earth. That's the biblical view of stewardship, in which we're a part of nature, and God creates us and draws us from the dust of the ground and calls us to work the ground, to work the soil. Nevertheless, because of the fall, we can damage it, we can harm it, both for ourselves and for the other life on the planet. But God gives us minds as well, and just as we can harm the earth and can harm the soil, if we study it carefully, if we understand the ways in which the soil and the life it sustains interact, we can find solutions.
Our land care practices greatly impact what goes on in the soil. If we remove our crop residues, we're removing the food for the organisms, for those bacteria and fungi, which begin this whole cycle of bringing nutrients to the plants. They help out a number of other ways through disease suppression and in soil-water dynamics. And so having a healthy, productive soil with a full complement, a supporting cast of all these organisms present is so critical. You remove that food, though, you have lower populations. And then you have to provide those nutrients in other ways. And then we become more and more dependent on chemical inputs and so forth. But God has put in place a system that's remarkably complex and thrilling, and we're just scratching the surface on what is actually going on there.
It's important to know about soils because this is all we have. There's no new earth being created that we can go take this is what we have, and we need to take care of what we have and be aware of what it is and what makes it better and what destroys it, so that we can be good caretakers of this little tiny section where we get all of our food from.
I knew that all life comes from soil, and that we had to figure out how to help the soil get back to the way it was. And we thought there's got to be a better way to farm. The soil was totally sterile, was dead. Yes, we could grow 200 bushel corn an acre, and we did. And we have a plaque that says we grew 200 bushel corn to the acre. But things just didn't feel right. One of the things that inspired us to change our farming practices from a row crop type of farming, industrial farming, corn, soybeans, to an all grass-based farming system, it's a much healthier system. If we're to survive as a people and as an earth, we need healthy soils. There's no question, without a living, healthy soil, be no existence in the future. We went to the whole entire grass-based system, utilizing cattle. The cattle do the harvesting and the cattle do the fertilizing. We manage the grass and we manage the cattle. Because we're, like Dorothy says, what are we? Caretakers.
Caretakers.
Yeah.
We're not here forever. The land will be.
We're like the grass, we're like the animals, we're like all the organisms. We have a life cycle, but the place will still be here. So as you're looking around the farm, you're actually looking at the soul of Dorothy and I, of how we want our farm to look.
One of the things that we've done in an industrial food system is we've removed the animals from the land. So the animals are in feedlots in the middle of the country, and the farmers with their fields that could use that composted animal manure are on the periphery and miles away. And so we really need to start thinking about soil conservation, farm conservation, where our food comes from. Obviously really, really important issues as we go into this new century.
Outside Grand Rapids, Michigan is the community-sponsored agricultural farm Trillium Haven. Their owners, Michael and Anya Vanderbroek, are raising pesticide-free crops without the use of chemical fertilizers for consumption by themselves and other shareholders of the 50-acre farm. Anya also enjoys teaching farm visitors about what they're doing.
It's not just for us to use and abuse and use up, but that hopefully our children, and if not them, someone else is going to have this farm, and it's going to be able to feed Grand Rapids and feed the people around here for hundreds and hundreds of years, which is how, you know, like the Chinese had little tiny plots of land that they had for 7,000 years because they knew feed it and feed it and feed it, and it'll feed you back. You don't just use up your soil and use up your land.
And so everything that we do in all our farming practices here, we want to increase the productivity and the health of our soils. We don't practice burning or intensive tillage. We're promoting those ideas, those techniques that favor an accumulation of life below the ground, because this is what supports life above the ground.
ECHO analyzes local environments and their resources, whether in Indonesia or Siberia, and seeks to provide an inexpensive and successful program of sustainable food production.
The world's poor often get the worst land, and the worst land in terms of farming is often steep hillsides. You're often far from markets. It's difficult to bring your produce and your crops into the cities to sell. But the other significant factor is these steep slopes, which are constantly exposed to rain, and when that rain hits this steep grade, it obviously has this effect of taking with it soil. And your lightweight soil, which happens to be organic matter, that decaying leaves and sticks and such, is some of your most important material in your soil. So to lose that is really hard for farmers. And so you often see the poorest quality soil on steep hillsides. There's several ways to minimize soil erosion on hillsides. One method you see here is planting the contour with tree species. It's a hedgerow of densely planted leguminous trees. And these leguminous trees do a number of things. They anchor the soil. They're a wall that when the water hits it, the water goes through, allows the water to go through and leave behind the precious soil. Then in the alleyways between your hedgerows, you're able to farm. And so when the water hits, it's just in this area here that you have a rapid movement. Then it hits that wall of trees and slows down.
So this is basically a sand dune. So to stabilize it, we have just overlapped tires. In fact, tires make a very nice stair step to go over a steep area. The only reason we have wood here is so we don't catch our toe on it. If you didn't have wood, that wouldn't be necessary. It's working really well for us. It's just an incredibly steep slope of sand, and we've hardly lost anything from it over the 6 years that it's been here. Yeah, now is this a technique you could use overseas? Absolutely, because one of the big problems is disposal of tires. Not only are they an eyesore, but the rainwater it collects in them breeds mosquitoes, which means you've got dengue fever and yellow fever and malaria. So this essentially has taken several tires that are no longer usable for anything else out of circulation and put them to a great use.
Through its global research, ECHO has discovered varieties of avocado that produce their fruit in each of the 12 months of the year. By grafting these varieties into local avocado seedlings, growers can have fruit all year long.
The trees that we grow in the nursery at ECHO, many of them are sent overseas to missionaries or development workers who are in the field who are wanting to bring in some improved tropical fruit trees to their area, such as improved varieties of avocado or mango or citrus, or some things that have potential to be of great benefit to the people they work with but aren't yet in the area. So if we as an organization, as ECHO, can get high quality selected varieties of avocado into people's hands so that not just 1 month of the year we have avocado, but say 12 months of the year we have production, we've done a great service to that community. So we choose our main bud. On this one, we're going to choose that big one there. Let this flourish, just as this one has. Take off these side buds, and so it becomes our new tree. Take off these shoots that are coming up from the rootstock. This one here was an example of how you would graft in a developing country where you don't have all the same supplies that we have here in America. This black piece of rubber band is actually from a bicycle inner tube, which are pretty common in a lot of other countries of the world.
Because so many of the world's poor are compelled to work in large urban areas where many face unemployment, it's critical for them to find creative means of providing for themselves. ECHO has developed a number of techniques that poor urban dwellers can use to grow their own food.
Even in places like a city where there's almost no soil, just pure concrete, you can either make your own soil or make your compost from kitchen scraps, or if you have leftover grass clippings or any other vegetation that you can use. Or getting around the traditional sense of soil and using things like here we're growing things in wood chips or even pop cans on a carpet, using things that act as a soil if the soil is not available. To do this, we lay a layer of carpet on the bottom, and so the plant actually grows right into this carpet. So here you have the plant growing right into the carpet. See its roots there, essentially no soil at all, a low-tech hydroponic system where the plant's getting all its nutrients and water from this carpet that wicks, the water wicks from these buckets, these irrigation buckets. Just a simple 5-gallon bucket with a hole in the top. Here we have the tire garden, one of the rooftop favorites. Simple, no shortage of tires in most urban areas, and it's a super durable container. And the plants do real well here. Basically, we'll cut the rim off, take that and flip it upside down, and it fits nicely on the bottom. Put a piece of plastic underneath.